I tell you what, I wasn't expecting to pick up this series and find it has one of like the coolest magic systems I've ever seen. So, always a plus when that's the first thing that stands out on a book. Hello and welcome to my channel. In this video I will be talking about the Runelords, or the Sum of All Men, depending on what edition, which is the first book in the Runelords series by David Farland. Now, this is one where I've had like book 4, I think, book 3 or 4, had for years. Randomly got it at like a thrift shop or something like that. And then over time, I've found a few more here and there. So I have like a really like random selection of the ones that I have. I think like 3, 4, and then like 6 and 7 or something like that. Always have meant to get to. I think I mentioned it. And then talking to T from An Erudite Adventure, ended up jumping on a buddy read with it. Liam from Liam's Lyceum also jumped on as well, and we're all reading. These ones I did for the... I've actually read the second book by this point. This review is a little late in coming. I did the first 2 on audio, though, because with Audible, they're actually included, so you don't even need a credit, and it's narrated by Ray Porter, which, you know, is a plus, because I really like Ray Porter. So, talking about this series, though, jumped in and just very quickly with the setup of the world and the magic system. For one, this is definitely the kind of world that is just extremely, extremely high fantasy. Lots of different magical things, and there are magical, you know, there are different creatures, fantasy races, kinds of magic going on. There's the main magic system, but then there's like earth and fire and other elemental magic, all kinds of other stuff, and just that really, really rich feeling of a classic fantasy world where there are creatures, different people, things like that that are brought up that aren't like central to the plot, but just kind of setting up that world. It's already a good thing, but like I said, the magic system here is just one of the coolest that I've seen and read, and the more you explore it, the more interesting it gets. So we'll definitely talk about those things. Briefly, I'll talk about what the start of this book is. And in the first book, we have our main character, Gaborn, who is going and he's trying to win the hand in marriage of a princess from another kingdom, and he himself is a prince. And so that's kind of the start, but then they come on to a plot and a big thing happening and war outbreaking, but the stakes also being much higher as well in that world. And so that's kind of the base part there. We do spend a fair amount of time in the first book kind of learning about the world, but it's done in a fairly organic way where we're learning as we go. Now, the magic system, because I want to talk about, just because, like I said, really, really fascinating, reminds me a little bit of Hemorrhagy from Mistborn, and so I wonder if this is something Sanderson read and like took some inspiration from, just because it feels like it's a little bit kind of related. And essentially what it is it's called endowments, and then the people who use them are the Runelords, and somebody can give basically a part of themselves, a specific attribute, to somebody else via the use of this special type of blood metal, and then they basically take it from them and then brand it onto the person receiving it, and then they can take on that aspect of them. Includes things like stamina, strength, wit, eyesight, voice, glamour, all kinds of different things like this. And so we can take it from others, but the other person does have to actually be doing it willingly. Like, they could be technically coerced, but if they don't agree and actually want to do it, it can't be done. So it sets up something interesting there. But it's one of those magic systems where the more you learn about it, the more kind of horrifying it is. And I won't go into super deep there with it because of the spoilers, but it's also introducing this as the main magic system and how it changes things as well, because what it does when the really important people, the nobles, are able to do this and be so much stronger or faster or better than just common people, what's required for that, the fact that it has to be given willingly, at least to a degree, that kind of thing as well, and what it does to the people who then give those endowments, and that kind of setup for a world, and playing with some of the ideas of like people giving everything for their country and for their king and or their lord or that kind of thing. A lot of those ideas that you see a lot in medieval setting fantasies are explored here in a very different way because of that, which I just found really fascinating. And also, it's just rare that a book sets up this already unique and really interesting magic system and then also spends time discussing the morality of the magic system in a society that's based around it. So it just did so much more with the magic than I was thinking. And like I said, that's not even to mention the fact that we also learn that there's all kinds of other different magics that exist as well, just an extremely magical world. So already, if you like really interesting magic systems, I would say this is a fairly... the book uses both hard and soft, because the use of the endowments are a fairly hard system, because there are specific rules with how they work. It does specific things, and there are like consequences that are kind of laid out, that sort of thing. But we also have elemental magic that exists, which is just a little bit softer, so you kind of get a mix of that and just a very, very high fantasy, very magical, different type of world. So a lot there. And the characters and the plot that's being set up too, the way they're doing it, I thought worked extremely well. There were a few moments in the first book where some kind of philosophy is brought up that didn't feel like it totally fit. That, especially after reading the second book, which I'm not gonna talk at all about the second book, but I will just say it was more setting things up, which I kind of figured with it, and going from there. To do that, but the stakes that are set up and the different kind of villains we have, because we have our human villain Rajan, who is trying to take over everything and just become like the supreme leader of all men of these kingdoms in order to fight the even greater enemy. And then you have the other side trying to go against him, but also worried about the fact that this greater enemy is still out there and digging into that kind of thing. The way this book goes, it almost felt like it could have been a standalone in the first book had a few things been changed. But getting into book two it takes a while to get going, because it's really starting to expand and add a lot more and really dig more into the bigger picture. And so it, I thought, worked pretty well. And like I said, the first book especially, it went pretty quick. And it just, there were so many things as I was reading that I just found like, that's really interesting. And so I'm really excited to continue with this series. And like I said, it's just the characters I thought were well written, and that we have a pretty wide group of characters, both male and female, and that have kind of different roles and different thoughts and different internal struggles. And I liked the way that was handled. It's also just like I said, this first book and the second book kind of continues it in a lot of ways while also developing some of the characters more, but it also just sets up so many fascinating questions, and I definitely get why this is a longer series, because there's so much to look at and explore and talk about because of this magic system, which just kind of fundamentally changes the way society works. It changes the way wars are fought. It changes what's possible. Like, when you can take these attributes from a ton of people, like the things that you can do through that magic are things that you just could never possibly do in a lot of other books. Like, for example, fast travel. If you give your horse the like speed and strength of 10 other horses, well, you can move at speeds that are pretty ridiculous, because once again that. And it's not even just that like we can do whatever we want with it too. Like I said, there are rules and there are consequences, and there are still things that it doesn't work that way, or like, oh, you could do this, but this is what's going to happen. And so it's a really well thought out magic system that just fundamentally changes the society, and exploring that and the philosophies around the morality of the magic system, I found to be so fascinating. This was one of those books where it's not really religion, it's just specifically this magic system and discussing that, but the way it's done felt almost like some of those books that explore religion that I like, except it was with the magic system. So just really interesting. Definitely a book if you like cool magic systems, really high fantasy, that kind of thing, those kind of looks, while still having strong characters and good action. Definitely a solid book and or series to check out. I've done the first two, like I said, so far, both of them strong 4-star reads. Really enjoying them, and I'm excited to see what comes next. So it'll be interesting to continue this series as I get to the other books. And just looking at the covers of some of the other books also make it interesting, because that's very specifically the first one I picked up, which I'll put it up here because it's over there. But Wizardborn is the first one I had, and I don't know, something about the cover, I'm just like, I want to know what this is. So I'm glad to be finally getting to these. I'm excited to continue, because I'll be doing, especially once because the ones I have physical copies of so far. Although I'll probably get physical copies for the rest of the series if it continues being the way it has, that I really enjoy. But I'll be doing a mix there. But the audio is nice too. And I will say on the audio, because Ray Porter I'd only ever heard do sci-fi, he does use a very different cadence for this with it being fantasy. I think he does also a great job here. So just a solid narrator as well with doing that audio. But really, really interesting series. Like I said, I was not really sure what to expect, but this is one of the reasons I love picking up older series, because this is one picking up, like I said, just so many things that I love and that were done in a really unique way. And it's just, yeah, I know there's always new people doing new and unique things too, but there's so many just older series that are out there that I also still want to get to, which is why I like doing such a mix of it. But overall, those are really my thoughts on the Runelords, first book in the couple of things I said about book 2 by David Farland. So let me know if you have read these before. I know a few people mentioned it when I talked about this in wrap-up and some other things as well. Let me know your thoughts on that, or if any of the things that I said sound interesting, or if that makes you think of, any other types of books or magic systems. I'd be curious to see if you know of anything else that does similar things to this, just because it was a really, really cool thing to explore. So let me know, of course, in the comments. Make sure to give the video a like if you enjoyed it. Check the link in the description, as always, for the Wizard Leader a Discord if you want to chat books, whether this book, other books, any books, really anything at all. It is a lot of fun and we'd love to have you. And of course, if you enjoy my content, make sure to subscribe.